Hi friends, I'm Pastor Carrie. Welcome to Sunday School. I'm glad we get to be together again. Boy, we've been doing this for a long time, haven't we? Meeting this way. I know it's difficult. I know it's so different, but hopefully we're also seeing the value in it. Hopefully we're all realizing that although we can't be together the way we normally are, that we are thankful that we can be together this way. I know I'm thankful that we can be together this way. So friends, we are on chapter 14 of the story. We're moving right along. This chapter 14, is called A Kingdom Split in Two, or Torn in Two, as a kingdom torn in two. It's another one of those stories where we are reminded that when we meet these characters in the story, in the Bible, that we have to look at them the way God did, right? Where we're seeing all of the good, all of the ways that people are cooperating with God, and all of the ways that they are allowing God's forgiveness and wholeness to transform them. And we certainly want to learn from those examples. We want to follow that example. And that sometimes the characters that we meet in the Bible, in the story, when we hear their stories, when we close our eyes and we imagine them in our minds, that there are pieces of their story that are examples, and they are examples of what not to do. Where God is saying, here's someone who made a decision to do things their way instead of my way, and things didn't go well for them or the people around them, the people they were leading, and I need you to look at that, and I need you to decide now to not make the same mistake. And that's just part of God's love for us. And this is where we find ourselves in this week's story. King David and King Solomon were in many ways good kings and offered us many, many examples to follow, things where we can look at it and say, and we can see the image of God that their lives paint for us, and we can say, oh, that increases my understanding of who God is. It deepens my understanding of who God is, and I'm going to follow that example. And then there were also parts of their stories, both David and Solomon, where we had to go, that's a caution flag, isn't it? Isn't it? They're being an example to us right now, and it's written down in the scriptures in the Bible, and I'm reading it, and it is a caution flag. It is an example of what not to do. What not to do. And so because of that split where David and Solomon were faithful, and then there were times when they weren't faithful, things got torn apart. And the nation of Israel, God's chosen people, got torn apart. And when we start our story today, we have two nations. We have the nation of Israel and the nation of Judah. And our main character this week, I have my story card here, is King Asa. He became the king of Judah, and he was a good king. He was a faithful king, and we're going to talk about his example to us. Asa did what was right in the sight of the Lord. 1 Kings chapter 15, verse 11. Asa did what was right in the sight of the Lord, not just what was right in his own mind. Sometimes we do that. We do what's right in our own minds. But we have to check that. We have to say, pause. I'm going to talk to God about this. I'm going to talk to people who follow God, and I'm going to find out if what I think is right is just what I think is right, or what is right in God's eyes, what God's plan is for me. Let's see. Asa brought the Israelites back to worshiping the one true God. In Asa was someone who loved God and wanted others to love God. And he used the example of the bad kings and their unfortunate decisions, their bad choices, to learn how to be a successful ruler. So he was doing exactly what we're talking about. He was looking at the people who came before him, and he was saying, that's a good example. I'll keep that. That's a bad example. I won't go there. I'll keep that one out there, and I'll learn from their mistake. So that's King Asa. So here's what I want to jump right into, our two questions. Who is God, and what does God want from us? And we are in a place where once again, God is showing who God is. God is faithful. We've learned that over and over and over again. God does not give up on us. God did not give up on God's chosen people in the story of Israel. No matter how disappointing their decisions, their actions, their choices, no matter how angering their decisions, their choices, their decisions were, God never gave up on them, and God will never give up on us. Who is God? God is faithful. What does God want from us? God wants us to be faithful. God wants us to decide now and every moment to come that we will do things God's way, that we will cooperate with God's plan for us, that we will do what is right in God's eyes, not just in our eyes. Our sight is limited, isn't it? It's like there's blinders like this, right? Our sight is limited, and God's sight is limitless. God sees the whole picture, and sometimes we just have little tiny pieces of the picture. So we want to do what is right in God's eyes, not just our eyes. We want to do things God's way instead of our way. And King Asa is such a good example to us. He was wise. He learned from the mistakes of other people, and he walked towards God. He kept God in sight, and he walked towards God's plan for him, towards doing things God's way. And he was very intentional, on purpose, about pointing everybody else in that direction. Go this way. This is God's way. Go this way. And isn't that what being a disciple is about? Is that we're receiving all the love of God. We're being changed by the love of God. We are deciding to do things God's way. And then we get so excited about all of that love that we've received that we start responding to that love by saying, hey, everybody else, go this way. This is a good way, right? This is the ancient path we're asking for, the good way, the way that leads to rest for our souls. This is the way we want to go. This is the road. This is the way paved with God's love. I want to share just a quick story. My brother is called Asa. His name is Asa, and it's a family name, but it's also a name from the Bible. King Asa was a good king. He followed God, and he pointed the way towards God for other people. And my brother is not a king, but he has always been someone who has followed after God and has pointed other people in that direction. And he's done that for me as well. Many, many years ago when he was young, friends, he was really not much older than any of you. He gave me this little card in here. Now I've framed it in a fancy frame, but it's just a little piece of paper, and it says, God looks at the inside, with an exclamation point. And that was such an encouraging thing. I don't know what was going on. I can imagine I wasn't having a very good day. Something must have happened. I don't remember, but I do remember my brother stepping in. I was at my parents' house visiting, and he still lived at home, and he came up, and he must have sensed that I was having a rough day, and he gave me this little tiny piece of paper that says, God looks at the inside. And that was years and years and years ago. He was maybe in 3rd or 4th grade, not very old at all. And he was like King Asa. He was pointing me towards God. And you're no different, friends. You're no different. You'll never be a king. I'll never be a queen. We don't do that anymore, right? Here in the United States, we don't do that. But we can be like King Asa, where we are choosing to follow God, and where we are encouraging everyone else to go this way. We're pointing other people towards God, so that they can be wise in God's eyes, not just in their own eyes. All right, friends, one more time. Who is God? God is faithful. God never gives up on us. Who is God calling us to be? God is calling us to be faithful, like King Asa, where we are following God on purpose, and where we are pointing other people down that ancient path, down that good way, down that way that leads to rest for our souls, where they too learn to do things God's way instead of their way. All right, friends, lots to think about. Have a great week. Jump into chapter 15, and we will see you next time.